So hopefully you're watching this because you're interested in getting into competitive English longbow tournament archery. And little disclaimer, this is not necessarily for complete beginners to archery, but for people that have shot before, recurve compound, bearable or something, and are interested in getting into competitive longbow archery. So naturally, the first thing you're going to want to consider is what sort of bow to get. So nowadays, the more high performance bows compose of bamboo backing with a combination of exotic hardwood cores. And I've got a number of these behind me to show you. So first of all, we've got the bamboo backing on this Gary Evans Adamus here, and we have 3 additional laminates of a combination of various rosewoods and things like Brazilian walnut and ipe, and the same for the back. Now what makes these woods so good for bows is the obviously bamboo we get for speed, so that's sort of like a must now for tournament grade longbows, and all of these exotic hardwoods make for an extremely fast bow, and they allow you to make a bow that's relatively narrow for the draw weight that you're shooting. So we like a narrow bow because it allows us to, well, I don't know what's technically the most correct thing about this, but either you can shoot a stiffer arrow or you get a wider spine tolerance for your arrow. And as we can't really tune anything with our bows, all we can really do is tune and match our arrows. This is quite important as it really helps us out. So there are quite a large variety really of wood combinations that make a really good bow. You can see many now with additional laminates of bamboo or more different varieties of wood. The crucial part being that you have quite a lot of laminates because that seems to make a faster bow, and it's got a combination of these hardwoods and bamboo in it somewhere. You also, the reason we want this is we're talking about getting the most performance and speed out of our bows, and this is really crucial if we're shooting outdoors, which I'm sure you all want to do. And so to reach the 90 metres and 100 yards, etc., without having to aim at the sky and compromise our scores from having a not so friendly point of aim, we need a high performing bow and a slightly higher poundage than you perhaps would if you're shooting a recurve, for instance. So this particular bow here is 50 pounds at my draw length. This one here is 54, and with both of these bows I can get, with the right arrow, but I'll come to arrows later, both of these bows I can get a point of aim on the target at 100 yards. Now that might not seem that impressive for you guys with sights and all that, but if you're shooting anything like this 40-pound bow I've got here, at that distance, because of the serious lack of speed and performance we get out of a longbow, with it being so primitive in comparison, you're having to aim at, you know, you've got your hand almost completely covering the target with an under the chin anchor point, which I recommend you continue with anyway. And it really compromises a lot of points that you can get just from having, you know, even by struggling a little bit more perhaps with draw weight and maybe your form, but having a point of aim that's a lot more reliable and a lot more consistent, you gain a lot more points that way. So one final thing we want to consider with our longbow is that it's got a bit of reflex or deflex, or whichever way around it is, when it's unstrung. So rather than this one being completely straight or taking a bit of a set where the limbs would follow the string, it's going in the opposite direction. This gives it a bit of extra cast and a bit of extra speed, which will help us when we go outdoors. But say you don't want to shoot a ridiculously heavy draw weight, there are ways of making it work with your lower poundage bows. So here I've got a 40-pound one, which is one I use indoors. And there are some chaps I know, master bowmen, that shoot lower draw weight bows at the longest distance by using incredibly lightweight arrows. And there are pros and cons to this. Obviously you can shoot a lighter weight bow, so you can achieve better form, but you're a lot more at the mercy of the wind, which can cost you a lot of points. And of course your point of aim is probably still not going to be as good as it was if you're shooting a heavier weight bow. And in case you're wondering, as I mentioned before, I had the same aim, I had the same point of aim with this £54 bow and this £50 bow. And that's because this one, if I quickly avoid the warranty and de-string it, hopefully, as you can see from the heights here, both the knots are together. This one is considerably shorter than this one. And a shorter bow, you get a much better cast and a bit more speed than you do out of the longer bow, but the longer bow will be a bit more smooth and a bit more forgiving. So I've taken to shooting this one quite recently. That's just my preference right now. But for a very long time I struggled to get on with this bow, just because on release it was so hard to handle. So I spent pretty much all of the outdoor season shooting this bow. And this is a great bow, love it to pieces. But I've recently switched to this bow this last indoor season and now outdoors, and I've shot a number of my indoor UK records with this bow, where this lighter weight bow used to be my indoor bow. And again, got some UK records with this one as well, but I just have a preference now for the speed I get with this one. That brings me on to one other thing about the outdoors and the distance shooting, is it's not uncommon on the line to see longbowers swapping bows between every distance. And the benefit you get from this is, of course, you can shoot a heavy bow very long distance and swap to a lighter bow when you get down to the 50 or the 30 or whatever, where you don't necessarily need all of the extra speed and all of the extra cast. And by all means do it if you've got the money to spend, and you can still buy the performance bows, go for it, but you don't necessarily have to. I only have these because I've been doing this best part of 5 years, and I've accumulated these bows slowly over time. But for most of my features now, I just stick with one bow, as my body doesn't take it very well when I try and switch draw weights mid-shoot. Although I have tried it, my first master bowman score was shot shooting this one and then swapping to this one at 30 metres. So it is something people do, and it is something to perhaps consider if you're not so keen on shooting a heavier longbow all the way through. So while we're on that subject of draw weights and distances, if we consider indoor archery, if that's all you're interested in, you don't need necessarily the heavy poundage, but it can help. Obviously you get more speed, and you know from your recurves and compounds that can generally be a good thing. And as I've just said, I've shot both of these bows. I've shot my 40 pound and my 50 pound indoors, and have got equally great results with each. So it will become a personal preference, but the point in that is you can still shoot your heavyweight bows indoors, you can still shoot your lightweight bows outdoors, but don't feel like if you get a heavyweight bow that you then can't shoot it indoors, because you can. I've shot this one outdoors and indoors, and it's currently my preferred bow. And I'm not the only one that shoots like that, so feel free to do that. So you're perhaps thinking now, where do you get your bows from, and who makes bows like this? Well, there are a number of bows currently at the moment that are making bows to this sort of spec, and it's the spec that's important rather than the manufacturer at this stage. But obviously all of my bows that you can see in this video are Gary Evans longbows. Gary Evans sells his bows out of Wales Archery in Crick, South Wales. And there's a number of different lines that have slightly different wood combinations. Many bowyers do this. They make sort of different grade bows which have different woods in. For instance, this one is a bamboo, purple heart, ipe and lemonwood. And this one is bamboo and then 3 laminates of the slightly higher grade woods, the rosewoods and the ipes. So side by side of the same spec, this one would perform slightly better than this one. But to be honest, these are such good bows. There's probably not a great deal in it initially, to be honest. So Gary Evans is definitely one to consider. Other manufacturers or bowyers, Cliff Guide from Raven Longbows makes an outstanding bow. If I had the money, I'd definitely have one of his bows. They're definitely some of the smoothest and fastest bows I think I've ever shot, and I've shot a number of bows. He makes them to these sort of specs with a number of laminations, and he's also a Grandmaster Bowman Archer, won the Masters a number of years, and he's such a good shot, he knows what makes a good bow. So that's another thing to consider when you're looking at bowyers, it's good to select ones that are, well, it can be good, or a good indication of a good bow if they're a good archer in the first place. That being said, along those same lines, if people like Adrian Hayes, Lee Ankers of Heritage, their bow, Maiden Clop, they all make bows of this spec, and they're worth considering. And just to finish that bit off, these type of bows will probably set you back in the region of £400+, and I wouldn't really spend any less, to be honest, because you want a piece of equipment that's quality and it's going to give you the performance that you need to be competitive and to develop your own archery. And you really, there's going to be deviations either side of this line, but if you go much less, you're going to start to lose quality, you'll lose finish, you'll lose performance. And in my personal opinion, which is what this video is about, it's not worth it, and it's not the advice that I'd give to someone who wants to get into it properly and wants to take it seriously and be competitive. I'd either save up and shell out on a slightly more expensive bow than just get your hands on a bow as quickly as possible and make your way from there, because you will perhaps, I think, get more out of a bow like this. And I missed out one important thing about field archery. If you're interested in field as well, you can shoot all of these bows in field. I do. This one is now my field bow, my 40-pound indoor one, which has, for the time being, been retired from target archery, is my field bow. And this is 40-pound draw weight, and this is good enough for me to get 50 metres with a corner of the mouth anchor with my third finger or second finger. And I wouldn't go any less than that. If you go heavier, you can shoot these, of course, not with a kisser. You have to take the kissers off for field, but you can shoot them. And the faster the bow, the smaller your gaps are going to be, and the less distance between, the less variation in your gaps for distance you'll have, if that makes sense, with a faster bow. And that brings me on to my next part, because arrows is like an enormous part of this, and having the right arrow is almost as important as having the right bow, and that's where part 2 comes in.